Hi, everyone. This is Sonia Lal. Welcome to the interview series, Your Child's Best Future, How to Get Your Child into a Top College and Set for a Happy, Successful Life. We're doing this interview series to learn from experts who can bring clarity to the college admissions process for high school students and their parents. Today, we're excited to have Craig Apple join us. Craig has had the good fortune to serve as the Executive Director of Hand in Hand Parenting since February 2015. Prior to Hand in Hand, Craig worked for 15 years at the Energy Foundation, where he served as the Director of Partner Relations, creating and directing a highly successful funding partner program. As a volunteer, Craig is the immediate past chair of the board of the San Francisco Waldorf School, the largest Waldorf school in North America. He holds a Bachelor of Arts degree from Michigan State University and a Master of Nonprofit Administration degree from the University of San Francisco. Craig lives with his wife, Kate Holcomb, and their 4 children in San Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us, Craig.
Thank you, Sonia.
So tell us a little bit about how you got involved in hand-in-hand parenting and what you do there.
Yeah. Well, first I'll say that, Hand in Hand Parenting is a nonprofit organization that provides practical support and tools for parents to deepen their connection with their children so that both children and parents thrive. Hand in Hand started about 20 years ago by Patty Whipler, and the tools and support that we provide really evolved from her experience as a parent and as an educator. But what happened over those 20 years is that, cutting edge brain science and social science have really validated and really popularized the idea that the parent-child connection is, the critical factor in helping children not only avoid the worst pitfalls of growing up, teenage pregnancy, alcohol and drug abuse and depression, but also it's critical in promoting self-confidence in children, grit, and the social and emotional intelligence that will help them thrive in the modern connected world. And Hand in Hand, we have nearly 100 instructors around the world who support and provide these tools for parents, and we also offer online courses and in-person courses around the world. And we work with families from all cultural and socioeconomic backgrounds. I found Hand in Hand, as you mentioned, I came to start as the executive director in 2015. When Hand in Hand, has been around for 20 years, but in many ways it's a 20-year-old startup. We have this very broad reach among parents, but it's not very deep. It's around the world, but it's, pockets around the world. And one of the things that we believe is not only does the parent-child connection provide all these values to parents and children and help individual families, but in aggregate, if many millions of parents start thinking about this way of respect for children and how to listen to their children and understand them and support them, that changes the world. Then there's a whole generation of children who are more able to connect with people of different backgrounds and different ideas and approaches. And so, that's really the mission of the large mission, the social mission of Hand in Hand. And that's why I joined, to really help us reach that higher level of impact, to really transform the world and human relationships around the world.
That's wonderful, Craig. Yeah, that is so critical because the field of psychology has just developed over the last 50 years, really. And,
absolutely.
Take those insights and bring them out to the world in a very practical way, like you're doing, is pretty amazing, actually.
Yeah, it's as I was saying to my coworker recently, it's an amazing journey that Hand in Hand has been on, but for me personally, it's been such an exciting opportunity to bring my passion, my personal passion. As you also mentioned, I have 4 kids. I spend a lot of time thinking about their development and what's best for them, and to be able to marry that with my professional life in a way that I think can really help change the world has been really satisfying for me. and challenging.
Yeah, that's great. Wonderful. Craig, tell us what advice you can give to parents about how they can strengthen their connection with their teenage children.
Yeah, I think that, I think the first thing to realize is that, as parents, teenagers still need connection with us. They still need their parents. They're not the babies that we, just cradled and protected and adored, who really needed our attention, almost constantly at the beginning, and then, it changes over time. But even as, young children, they need constant attention from their parents. Now that they're teenagers, they don't need constant attention, but their need for love, affection, respect, to know that we admire them, to know that they're worthy of that love and respect, is equally as critical. So I think, we would say that's the first thing that parents can do to strengthen their connection with their teenage children, is to realize that they need us, and they need that from us. They need the love and, respect and admiration that we can give them. I was thinking about this. I've talked about this with my friends. My oldest son is 14. So I'm not into the college process, but we just finished the high school admissions process, which is a baby step towards the college admissions process.
Right.
But we hear from parents around the world that, the relationship as parents to our teenage children is different, as I was mentioning, than the relationship with our babies, and infants. At that point, when they're that little, we're really managing everything. And we talk about the relationship with teenagers and adolescents more as an ally or as a consultant, as opposed to the manager, if you want to put it in business terms. We need to, the teens are at an age where they need to start practicing what they're learning in the world and who they're going to be, and start testing who and how they're going to engage in the world. But they still need us, to validate them, to course correct, when necessary. But it's a much more of an ally relationship, I would say, than, a manager relationship. And I'm sure, as parents, we know our own family best. And, certain children are more independent, and we need to treat them that way as teens. Others are still more, feel that need to stay more close to us, and we need to, meet them where they are. So, one of the things Hand in Hand talks about a lot is that, as parents, we know our family the best. If we've come this far to have teenage children, we clearly love them at a deep level. Sometimes it helps, when the arguments get really heated with teenagers, it helps just take a step back sometimes and remember, what it is that we deeply love about them, and look for that in them as we're covered in our, just reactionary modes when they push our buttons. Sometimes it's helpful to take a step back and remember what it is that we love and admire about them for who they are. All those things are starting to meet the teenagers at a level of respect that they need at this age. We don't have time to talk about, the early years of parenting tools and support that we provide, although the tools are similar. But, a lot of what we talk about is how to meet children at their level so that they feel respect. They feel that they are worthy of the respect that they're getting, because a lot of what they face is, not feeling that. So, we can validate. Yeah, go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was just thinking, that self-esteem issues come to play at the, in the teenage years so critically. If the child has been happy-go-lucky, but suddenly, sometimes during adolescence, it's like suddenly all that falls away, and they're just trying to fit in and trying to be accepted by peers. So all of that, I think there's a lot of self-doubt that comes
Absolutely.
in.
And those are real challenges that our children are facing on their own. And, one of the things, talking about how they still need us is for, the home to be the refilling station for their confidence and love and admiration and their own self-love. That's one of the things we can really give them And that, that doesn't mean obviously being permissive of everything. If they're off track and doing things, we need to acknowledge those directly. And we can talk about that a little later, some ideas that parents have shared with us over the years on how to do that effectively. Mm-hmm. But the idea that, they are facing real challenges in the world, like you mentioned, those social pressures and, the pressure to get into a good school and just be successful. Those pressures they're feeling earlier and earlier. One of the things they need from us is a reminder that they're worthy and they're great and we love them for who they are, and it kind of celebrate their teenage. They're going to be idealistic. They're going to make mistakes. They're going to be passionate. Celebrate those things. In a society that increasingly devalues those or shames people for trying and failing or being individual.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's really interesting. It seems like when you talk about respect and admiration, they're such beautiful words. You don't hear them much these days.
Right. And, one of the other, a central tenet of hand-in-hand parenting, and, your question of, how we strengthen connection is listening. Mm-hmm. That's also something we fail to do is listen to our children, mm-hmm. and I'm finding at age 14, this is an interesting child with all kinds of ideas flowing around in his head, and just listening to understand where they are, without advice or judgment, but just listening to them to understand who they are. Again, as a teenager, that's what that's really what the phase of development, that's what they need, is they need to express what they're learning and feeling and thinking as an independent person. And one of the great roles we can play is just listening to them, because constantly at school and, with friends, often they're being told what to do, do this, do that, that's wrong, that's right. Although I think a lot of teenagers also find that listening in friendships, but they need it from their parents as well.
Definitely, because I think one of the common things teenagers say about why they're not able to relate to their parents is because their parents don't listen to them.
That's right.
That's definitely critical, for sure. Yeah, it's definitely a skill. It seems
Absolutely.
Like a skill that you have to actually practice, and you have to fall down and then get up again.
Absolutely.
It's not natural skill.
And that's really at the crux of what Hand in Hand teaches, is how to listen to your children. Mm-hmm. And there's some simple things to do, but I think, as you point out, I think the most important thing to remember as parents is that it is a skill, that mm-hmm. children are resilient, that they know that we love them. And so we can't beat ourselves up too much for, not being perfect all the time, but, we can practice and get better at listening.
Right. And do you have any tips, Craig, on how parents can actually do that? Because I know children are leading very busy lives, but parents are too, and just to take time out to do
Absolutely.
that.
Absolutely. Yeah, maybe we can, you and I can talk about a few of those right now, just some of the ideas and, stories that we've heard, but I think, one of the things to remember again at the beginning is, don't beat yourself up as a parent, that, we're going to try and fail. And one of the things we can do is acknowledge when we're not able to be our best selves and listening to them. If we do get frustrated, to be able to walk away and say, you know what, I'm too frustrated right now. It's not your fault, but I can't participate now. Let me go take a breath and I'll come back. Those kind of self-regulation behaviors can help them see us as people. But I would say, another thing to remember is that, teenagers in particular, but little kids as well, they open up about their feelings. Little kids are much more emotional. The emotions are living closer to their skin. And as teenagers, they start to get a little more deeper inside them. But they're not going to open up and share anything unless they feel safe and connected to you. That's just like us as grown-ups. We walk into a party we're not just going to start telling people all our deepest, darkest secrets because we don't know these people and we don't know the place. And I think as you pointed out, some teenagers start to feel that they don't even know their parents and their parents don't know them. And so it starts with just making sure that they feel safe and connected to you. And that often they're going to share the truth is they're only going to share at those moments, not when it happens to be convenient. And this is hard for parents. We work all day, come home and say, hey, let's talk. I have an hour right now. Well, if that's not, they're not going to talk when they think it's convenient for us, but when they feel safe and connected.
Right.
And, one of the tricks we've heard from many parents on that, a tool on that front is really being available. One parent tells us the story of, her son always did his homework in his bedroom. And so she started to just go in, and that was his kind of also decompression time. He would be doing his homework, but she would go in and just read a magazine and not say anything. And sitting in the room created the opportunity, and after a little while, he would say, hey, Mom, I'm having real trouble with this math problem, et cetera, et cetera. And then, to start to open up about whatever's going on in his life. And, ultimately, by being available, you're creating an opportunity for them that doesn't feel forced on them, but that they're driving the engagement and the level of engagement. So, again, that takes time and patience. But if, or maybe we can be doing our work, at the same time they're doing their homework. But as soon as they, show some interest in sharing, then it's incumbent on us as the adult in the relationship to really dedicate our attention and focus on them. And they'll feel that, and that's when they'll, you don't want to be you can't be too pressury also, like, oh, well, tell me about what's happening with, social pressure, we have to, we have to let teenagers kind of open up slowly. And that's, that patience is a real challenge for parents. But I think, one of the simple tools we talk about is just making ourselves available. So when those opportunities arise, another thing is, finding ways to participate in things that they like to do. I've noticed with my 14-year-old, he'll ask me to play basketball with him. And it's not playing anymore. Like when he was little, it was playing against him and teaching him. And now it's me catching the ball that he shoots and just passing it back and watching him. And that's when he'll start to talk about, oh, he went on a date or he's thinking about asking a girl out. It's those moments where he feels safe and can let his guard down. Right. And so, one of the things we talk about is when you start to know, and again, parents, it's, only parents know their children best. And they start to see what those moments are, where the children are asking for our engagement. And so when we start to notice those, now I'll just go out and start playing basketball and let him come out with me if I feel like I have some time to talk, and see where it goes from there.
That's a great idea. Yeah. Definitely.
And I'm sure, I have boys, there's hundreds of stories of parents of teen girls who, maybe it's basketball for them as well. But it may be, at the Waldorf school, there's a lot of knitting going on among boys and girls. But when people start to knit, they start to talk, because you're not on the spot. You're doing something, but your parent is there with you. I can, if you don't mind, I'd share one other, little story. This is actually in the booklet that the adolescence booklet that we have supporting adolescence. But one mom tells a story about, it could be a son or daughter, who just always asks for, hey, can you scratch my back? Even at 16, 17, it's not the same as, they don't want constant affection, but they still need some affection. And this was her way of connecting, is, will you scratch my back? And then it led to a kind of, back massage from the mother to the daughter. And then in those moments is when the daughter would start to open up. She physically was relaxed, but she was also feeling connected and safe, almost probably feeling like she did when she was little, when her mom would hold her all the time. And so kind of finding those moments to reconnect with affection can also open up that relationship with children and allow us to find times to listen.
Yeah, that's really beautiful that you're saying this. It all points to the fact that our lives are so busy these days that it really does require time to connect and relate to your children. And that means, scheduling your day so that you have time for them. And,
that's right.
Not overscheduling the day with lots of activities where, parents these days sometimes feel like they're chauffeurs driving kids from one place to another. And, so it's really, kind of an underscheduling for both parents and children.
Yep. Yeah. And, what also was interesting is that, even in those in the chauffeuring, I have 4 kids, and sometimes I'm taking, 3 of them to go to one other kid's practice. But if there's an alone time with your teenager, even driving, if they, that's actually a time where they might feel, hey, I can, my parents not putting pressure on me. They're focused on driving. So they're not like all eyes on me. And they may start to open and, maybe drive for a little longer or say, hey, let's the 2 of us just go get dinner tonight. Mm-hmm. If things are moving in that direction, again, it's, and I think that, these are kind of all, tools or, ideas for, how to find those moments when listening can happen. Mm-hmm. I think one of the other challenges that we hear parents face all the time and that I personally face is, how to actually listen without giving advice right away.
Right.
Again, if we're going to be the child's ally or consultant and not their manager, we have to let them really tell us what they're thinking and feeling and deciding. And that's really hard, because we've been there and, sometimes some of us are used to being, as when they're little kids, being much more directive, but resisting the urge to give advice and just listening, because the more they talk, the more that's going to come out of them. And it may get to some deep issues of pain and fear and trauma that just don't come right away. And it only comes by us listening with attentive and respectful, response to them.
Yeah.
And that's really hard. One of the other tools of hand-in-hand parenting that we really talk and promote extensively, we call listening partnerships, but it's essentially finding a way as a parent to talk to another adult, to have somebody else to listen to us, because a lot of what comes up, I'm sure, all the parents listening to this and you and I both have had the experience of just being triggered by our kids, when they're saying, I just hate math. The first thing is, I didn't study math enough in college and I could have been an engineer, but I didn't. And so now we're laying all of our kind of trauma and past history on them when that's really not what they're saying. They may hate math, they may hate math because, the person sitting next to them is a jerk to them. Mm-hmm. It has nothing to do with the subject of math. Mm-hmm. But we can't get there if we, immediately react based on our own experiences. And so, and to be a true, an attentive listener, we have to try to get rid of those, those triggers in us and just really listen attentively and lovingly to what they're saying. And one of the tools we talk about that, and I don't think we have time in this interview to go into it, but, we talk about listening partnerships, which is, how you find an adult where you can talk about your frustrations, your fears, your anxieties, so that those don't show up in the conversation when you're having it with your child. Because once they do, especially teenagers, it's easier for them to just say, you're not listening to me, forget it. And they shut it down. And you can't do much once that happens.
Right. So
a lot of the goal is to keep that, just to keep it open. And that's, keeping that open is really building the connection between you. And, that's where the science says, that building that connection comes from them feeling supported and listened to. That's how you physically manifest the idea that you're trying to connect with them and that you are connecting with them.
Right. Well, that makes total sense. That way parents have other parents that they can talk to, and they have a community in which they can process, whatever they're going through, and so it doesn't come out with their, teenagers. And,
Yep.
and that was, that
and absolutely. In the classes that we run, and we do run some classes. We've just started to run some classes for preteens. When it gets into the upper teenage years, we haven't run classes for parents of that age, but for preteens. But all those classes, in person or on the phone, they start with listening. They start with one person talking and another person listening to them about whatever it may be, so that there's a practice. Because again, just like you said earlier, it's a practice and a skill to be a good listener. We talk about that at work as managers and as leaders at work. You also have to be a good listener. That's how we learn. We have to remember that at home, and you have to practice it. It's not, because stuff does come up, and, especially, under we all remember many of us remember our teenage years, very vividly. And so some of those hurts and uncertainties and, fears that we had then still live in us. Mm-hmm. And how do we push those out of the way or clear them off the table, actually, so that we can listen and support our children right in front of us?
Right. That's so key. Craig, do you have any advice on how parents can support their teenagers during high school in terms of academics or the college application process or anything like that?
Yeah, kind of overall academically, I think, again, it's incumbent on us to remember, we know our children the best. And when we start to listen and really go back to seeing them clearly and not clouded on our judgments, but seeing them for who they are, we can see where their academic strengths and challenges lie. One of, and hand in hand, is not, it's not a tutoring program. It's not a, how to, we don't have tricks for math or science or reading comprehension. But what we do is, we do believe, and I again, as you mentioned, and I was talking about, a lot of the recent psychology and social science, points to the idea that, the emotional blockages and social challenges that children have get in the way of their learning, period. And we can help at home by helping them process their emotions,
Right.
And that's, that listening time, as, and sometimes, especially teenagers, they're also hormonal, and they can be very angry. And a lot of times that anger manifests as, even if they're angry at their friends, they can't take it out on them. They're going to take it out on us. And how do we listen to that pain that they're expressing without taking it personally, without getting defensive, without fighting back, but just, being there as a support and an ally and a listener to them so that they can unburden themselves. And, what we see, what a lot of studies have shown, mainly at the younger ages, but, my assumption is, correct or incorrect, that it carries through the teenage years, is that, children who are emotionally supported at home, they're more determined, they're more resilient, they're more curious and creative, and all of those things are what make them perform better in schools.
Absolutely.
And then, I think on the, the college application process, I know from experience with my friends, my brother, who's just going through this with his eldest daughter. But this is the process itself is a prime, event that's going to bring up all of these past traumas that we have, all of the, the pressure that we're feeling, the pressure we feel to get our kids into a good school. What does that mean about our parenting, that what they're going to be? And it's really incumbent on us to process those emotions and deal with those, our own insecurities, so that we're not bringing them to the process that's in front of us, which is really our child's future, not ours. One of the things we talk about is don't confuse our issues with theirs. I mean, they have real issues, and some of them may be the same, but we need to be able to focus on what they need our support for. I think this is one of those issues where, we have to avoid the temptation to, correct the mistakes that we made in our own childhood. Maybe we could have gotten to a better school, we thought, if we did X, Y, Z.
Mm-hmm.
But we have to have some trust and faith that they know what they're looking at, and they'll come to us when they need support and advice, but we can't start there. It needs to start with listening and respect for what they're going through, and letting them frustrate and vent their frustration and the pressure they're feeling, as opposed to adding to that,
right.
because of our own pressures that we felt or our own insecurities.
That makes total sense. And do you have
I'm sorry, I just would like to say one,
mm-hmm.
just a reminder that, and I've said it a couple times, but it's not easy, and as parents, even at young ages, many of us beat ourselves up for thinking we've made all these mistakes. Children are resilient, and we can help them be more so, but we need to, we can't, what Hand in Hand provides is not, hey, do this or you're wrong. It's, here's some ways you can help yourself help your child if you want to, but it's really incumbent on us to model that we as adults can play a constructive role in their future. And that, when they see that, they're starting to build their own confidence that they can be that way, that they don't need to rely on us.
Okay.
Anyway, I think I just want to remind, because sometimes as we do these interviews, it sounds like, hey, do this, do that, or you're going to fail.
Right.
And then I just want to make sure that that's not what parents are hearing, because it's, that's what children are hearing at school, and we all hear that. And we need to give ourselves a break and say, hey, we can actually do this. Now here's some tools we can try to help us get better.
Right. Yeah, that's related to my last question for you today, which is how can parents help their teenagers make good decisions so that when they go off to college, they'll be able to do that for themselves? So I think you started to answer that.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that is, that's a good transition. It's that, to really model that behavior, because we are going to, they are going to leave, and they're, when they get to college, they're on their own. They'll still need us in ways, monetarily, for sure, but also for emotional support. But it's, it's less likely when they're surrounded by friends that they're not coming home every night with the opportunity to find that. Right. So they're going to have to figure out their own self, management techniques. And one of the best things we can do is to model that for them. Like, wow, like we talked about earlier, if I'm starting to feel, if my son is saying something to me and it's really starting to trigger me, to be able to say, even if I yell at him, to be able to say, you know what, I need to stop. Yeah. I apologize for yelling at you because that's not what I wanted to do. But I'm feeling, uncertain about how to respond, and I need to take a break for a minute and just collect myself. Right. Sometimes even saying that enables us to do that. But sometimes we do need to leave and say, hey, let's come back. One of the other, so I think that's, for Hand in Hand, that's one of the things that we really are promoting, is that if we can model this behavior, not only do they see it growing up, but it actually improves the way we operate at work. I found in doing my, Hand in Hand parenting practice with my children, I'm a better listener to my coworkers at work. I can, I'm less, I'm the executive director, but I'm less directive and more, trying to get the best of everybody to contribute to the overall movement. And, bringing that same kind of management approach to our children, then they start to, you're building their confidence that they can make the right decisions, and they have this model for what that looks like from an adult who they trust, so, and, also, this is the hardest part, I think, for many parents, that, they're going to make mistakes. We made mistakes, and letting them make mistakes. And if they're the small ones, I wouldn't have chosen, to say that to my teacher or, whatever, or to treat my friend that way. We have to let them work through those, but if they're, if it's drinking and driving or, these major issues, then we need to set boundaries firmly and take the keys away or whatever that may be. But striking that balance again, we as parents know our children the best, and we know what that balance is for each of our own children, and building the confidence that we can make, that we can do that, and that they're going to, that the mistakes that they're going to make are going to help them grow, and the ones that we need to stop will also help them grow.
Right. Yeah, that's really good. I remember when we had talked earlier, we had also talked about, just how important it was to process emotions, appropriately and not let them get bottled down, like not have some idea that anger is bad or anything, but that there's a right way to manage it.
That's exactly right.
A few minutes ago, I was remembering our conversation, and it's just so critical, because I don't think we have a lot of good models in our society about processing emotions in a healthy way. So to have that's exactly right. And by, as we were talking earlier, by listening to our children, even if their anger turns towards us, and I hate you and it's your fault and all of that, to be able to separate our own feelings of hurt in the moment, because we know that they really don't mean it. And we're adults and we can do that. And to show them that it's okay to express that, but you're right, if it doesn't come out that way, who knows how bottled up anger comes out. It comes out in child abuse later in life, or reactions at work that are inappropriate to get you fired. I mean, all kinds of things. So we need to, help children find these ways of expressing anger and fear and insecurity in ways that are positive, that get rid of that pain, so that they can actually then act from a rational, centered place. Right.
And it helps us too. I mean, that's what I was saying, is that, one of the things, actually, when I was first had my first child, one of my coworkers said to me, he gave a toast it was a friend who gave a toast at like a little party that we had for the new baby. And he said, here's to children and all the things they're going to teach us, especially the things that we don't want to know about ourselves. And it's always struck with me that, as we're going through this process of listening to our children, we're starting to learn about ourselves, and we're getting better at handling our emotions that maybe we never had that behavior modeled for us. And now we're starting to take control of our, how we react to fear and anxiety and anger. So, we're seeing our own self-improvement as we're doing it to help our children and help them be better in the future as well. So that's been a real kind of surprise, a happy surprise for me, as I've started to embark on, the learning about listening and how to do it better with my children, is that I've seen myself get better at handling my own challenges in life, many of which are parenting, but many of which aren't.
Well, it's been wonderful to have you here, Craig. I understand you have a special gift for our listeners today.
We do. So we have a booklet. Hand in Hand has a series of booklets, but one specifically we call Supporting Adolescence. And we will have a code. The code is college on our website, where people who listen to this and want to download a free copy of that booklet may do so. And I'm sure that'll be on your, when you send out the email and on your website, the web address and all.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Craig. It's been a great pleasure to have you on this interview series, and you've just shared with us so much on such a deep level. I'm sure that all the listeners will be very grateful for all your advice. Thank you.
Thank you.